Hey guys, welcome to another East Coast Rams podcast. I'm your co-host here, Ashton, with my awesome co-host Zach, and we have some special guests in the house, Phil and James of Touchdown Jaguars. First off, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. Appreciate. How are you guys doing this lovely Wednesday night?
We're doing good, man. Thank you so much for having us. Appreciate you reaching out. I'm pretty upset the song ended early. But other than that,
Well,
yeah,
jam session before everything starts.
yeah, that's great. But no, that we're happy to be here. Thank you so much for having us. How about you, Jay?
Yeah, man. I'm always, as I mentioned in the pre-conversation we had, I'm always game to talk football with fans around, the NFL community. Because as Phil said, me and him, we once had time to look at film on all teams at that time. We can't do it anymore. So yeah, it's always good to have conversations like these and do crossovers like these, man. We love it.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely appreciate it. I don't know, do either of y'all do a British accent well? Because neither of us can. And it's you guys are more used to this than I would say we are. We did we played y'all once, I believe, in 2019, and then we did it against someone else in like 22. Uh, what about these UK games, these England games? Do you guys like? Do you kind of dread outside of the time?
So I'll start here, Jay. As far as the most obvious answer is that it takes a home game away from the fans, and that's
Mm-hmm.
been the biggest thing. And in past years, sometimes it's been two. Luckily now we're we only have one game this year where we're technically the home team. And Jacksonville is also going through this renovation as far as Stadium of the Future, and ramping up to that announcement and the approval from the city. They were doing some community reach outs to have people answer questions during that process. And I asked the president of football operations at the time, Mark Lamping. I basically asked, hey, if we fund this project, this multi-billion-dollar stadium as taxpayers, are we going to get that second home game back? And he just kind of didn't answer the question. So that's the most frustrating part of it, is taking a game away from the fans. But I
Mm-hmm.
will say, as Jay and I have learned in doing this show for 5-6 years now, is being able to open up to that fan base over there has been really cool. We get DMs sometimes and comments and downloads from people over in the UK, and they're like, yeah, the Jaguars are my team now. And that's always really neat. We haven't had the privilege of going to the game ourselves yet. It's definitely on our list, but it's kind of a thing where it's like, well, we get into some fans we probably never would have gotten before, but also you'd rather have that game here, obviously.
Yeah, I do think that if they ever decide to extend the season out a game, that you should just make that game, the mandatory, international game that each team has, to keep it fair amongst the fans, because the fans are used to the 8 games, 7 or 8 games, I guess, depending on the year. But I think fans are really accustomed to that, and you're really ruining, the season ticket, especially the season ticket holders. They're the ones who are paying for it, not the once in a while fans.
Yeah, and to add on to what Phil was saying, yeah, he's right. Like the fans of Jacksonville of the 904, they hate it, in terms of them taking away the game from us. But the pro in it, I guess I'll go with that, is we've done it so many times. We generally have success winning in London. And I know we would much rather have the game at home than I guess an easy win if you let Jacksonville Jaguars fans tell it. But yeah, man, we come away with some phenomenal wins, and even some wins we weren't supposed to come away with. I'll never forget the Ravens one, where we just ran up and down the field on them and scored 44 points that game. But no matter how bad the team is done, I think they're just so used to that trip to where they just perform well there, and they fared pretty well there, in recent times. So we always circle this game, right? as one that's interesting regardless of the opponent, whether it's an opponent that's significantly better than us or not, because we just know the track record they have, and they already have everything mapped out in terms of the logistics and their flight team and their travel team and so on. They know where they're going to stay. They've done this so many times, like they can kind of do it in their sleep, and it shows. Because in most cases, when we go to London, it looks like one team is suffering from jet lag. We're prepared. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, that can definitely be a good advantage for you guys, at least when it comes to travel and getting used to it so much. But it is awesome to see the NFL trying to expand to these different international markets. I know the Rams have a big contingent of fans, relatively big in Germany, and it's growing all over, and it's definitely a great thing for the game, I believe, just getting more and more talent and more eyes on it in general. But transitioning to this Jaguars team and coming into the season, I know you guys ended up hiring Liam Cohen, one of McVay's disciples. He's been around different places, Kentucky. You guys have had an interesting, let's say, head coaching search in the last few recent years. I know you guys tried Doug Peterson retread a little bit. We're not going to talk about the Ohio State guy. I know you guys don't want to talk about him at all. What in general coming into this year was your guys' expectations with this team, with this roster, and with Liam Cohen? I know he had a funny presser, but he had a great year with the Bucks last year. What about that did you guys take in, and then what did you guys expect?
You want to go first, Jay?
Yeah, I'll go first. So yeah, well, the key, we always knew what the key would be with this hire, and the key would be getting Trent Baalke out of the front office, because if you kept Trent Baalke, that would limit your coaching search for first and foremost, because a lot of people don't like to work with the guy. He has a track record. And when that happened, it was a crazy day because it actually snowed here in Georgia that day, which is rare. And I was outside shoveling snow that day. And I was made aware of the news very late, like an hour later. I come into the house and I see Phil and our thread just going crazy. I'm like, Trent Baalke's gone? And like, you never like to get excited by a guy losing his job, but Trent Baalke's made a lot of money off of us. He'll be just fine, by the way. So he'll be good. But that was the key, right? And then once that happened, you can start to see somewhat of a light at the end of the tunnel. Of course, like, they waited a little late to do it, and they lost out on Ben Johnson, which might have worked out for the better, because we got a coach going to Liam Cohen here. We got a coach in Liam here who Phil said it best. He really embodies Jacksonville. I know his presser was a little goofy, that first presser, and it left people scratching their heads. But we've seen in this league where those first pressers, they come off as awkward, and then the coaches ended up, going on to have great success. Dan Campbell, for example, he was talking about biting kneecaps and all of that stuff in his presser, and people were making a joke of it. And I was telling Phil and everybody, like, hey man, don't sleep on that guy. Like, that's a football mind to the T. And look at Dan Campbell now. And he has, of course, the support system there from the Lions in terms of their GM, Brad Holmes, who y'all are familiar with, right? Came out of the Rams front office. But yeah, Liam, as Phil said many weeks ago when we had the keep your name out of my mouth type of thing going on, he embodies Jacksonville in a lot of ways. And also, too, I think what really has stood out about him, and just not just him, but the whole regime, James Gladstone and Tony Boselli, is they came into this situation knowing that they needed to be as transparent as possible with his fan base. And I think that's the biggest thing that Liam Cohen is. Obviously, the stuff on the field is huge, and that is first and foremost. But the second thing on the list that has helped a lot is the transparency, which you can see in his pressers. You can see that it's been passed down to the PR team. They're showing more after game stuff and pre-game stuff. And they really heard our cry as fans in terms of wanting a transparent coach and a transparent front office.
Well, real quickly to that point, a big reason that I feel like McVay is super successful and really good at what he does is because his first step when he came into the building was creating a different culture and like not just a transparency, but also like results, but also process driven and kind of getting away from a lot of negativity that the locker room had coming out of the previous era. So is that something you guys have necessarily also seen with Liam Cohen and the way he's kind of changed the culture of the team? It's just it feels different. It feels a little bit more like let's just say oriented to the process versus just necessarily results.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it because I mean we're what Jay 7 8 years removed from the NFLPA putting out a statement about don't sign in Jacksonville. Like they don't take care of their front office, they don't take care of their players. So that's a long time in football terms, but in terms of just a time frame in general, it's not that long ago. And then like we said about the Ohio State guy, and then things with Doug Peterson got really messy towards the end because he just was so committed to Press Taylor, and that's something that happened in Philadelphia as well. So, like Jay said, it was just really important for them to come in here, reset the culture because it was broken. Like we didn't really have any kind of sense of direction. When they had initially, fired Doug and we're going to keep Trent Baalke, I canceled my season tickets that day, and I haven't gone back since the hire because I need to still see a little more proof of concept. But it was just something that I wasn't willing to sit through. Like last year was I hadn't been a season ticket holder as long as some other fans, but it was the first year in a long time that I really didn't go to that many games. I either gave the tickets away or resold them. And it was just because I was so frustrated with the product. And the head coach, right, Jay, is in press conferences, essentially throwing the quarterback under the bus. And, you luck into Trevor Lawrence, and then, he runs into two head coaches that just don't really seem to know what to do with him. And so that has been a really, really big part, just getting in here, being up front with the fan base, like you said, Jay, giving them this kind of unprecedented access that we haven't seen before, even in a loss. And it's just been a really big breath of fresh air to see that transparency. And it also helps that it's led to wins early on too. I think if we were 1-4 or 0-5, things would be a little bit different. People would be like, yeah, we don't want to hear all this. But the fact that we're seeing early success translate is a big part of it and why people are so happy with him.
And it all comes down to that relationship again and changing the culture. And you do bring in people like Liam Cohen, and you bring in people like James Gladstone, who was also obviously a Ram underneath Les Snead. And it really does it changes the environment, and it changes how the players play, and it has more of a buy-in and more of a community feel for that team, instead of just coming in and doing what we can, but not everyone has their back and things like that. So seeing more of a unified team, it definitely will improve your overall success for the future.
No, you definitely see a different type of product, and the product is a result of the new process, of the new culture. And you can definitely see players that not saying they were on purpose playing bad, but like it's hard when you don't, like, everyone knows this who's worked full-time any certain amount of time. When you have heart and buy-in into the thing you're creating, you work a lot more harder. You create a better product. That's just any job. And I feel like the NFL is exactly the same way. And all these guys are super talented, but can you maximize the opportunities they have to show off that talent? And some coaches do that better than others. And so you kind of brought him up earlier, Trevor Lawrence. What's with this offense going into, what was the preseason kind of like feelings about how this offense was going to be? You guys end up taking, I believe, Hunter at second overall, second, third, I can't remember. But you guys take an offensive player very high, also can do both things. What was the feeling about this offense going into the season, and how has it kind of transpired as the season has gone on?
Yeah, I'll start off here. So preseason wise, and as far as what people were seeing in training camp, was pretty positive. The takeaways were pretty solid. Now, the thing is, like a couple of years ago, maybe even a year ago, like Trevor and the offense was humming in the preseason, and people were really excited about what that was going to look like. And I can't remember, Jay, if that was the 8-3 start year or if that was last year, but you always got to take it with a grain of salt. Obviously a lot of things are scripted in the preseason, and things were looking good early on. As far as Trevor goes, like they really kind of stripped him down to the studs as far as like his footwork and trying to fix that, because again, that's stuff that he really just was not being properly coached on early on. So the Trevor Lawrence experience has been a roller coaster. Jay is definitely the one that keeps me grounded. He is the analytical one that's full of football knowledge. I'm the fan that's like, snap the damn ball, Trevor. Like get the snap off. And I get frustrated. I'm like, 16 sucks. And then I got to delete tweets later. But for Trevor, it really has been kind of all over the place, but it does feel like as the season has gone on, he's getting a better grasp of this offense. And if not for the fact that, Seattle was getting into the backfield over 60% of the dropbacks last week, it was one of his best games in this offense. And that's certainly encouraging. But when the offensive line is now going the opposite way of Trevor, then you're like, well, great. We need these two things to be in sync. And it seems like they may not be because of injury or, the left tackle. There's a whole lot of issues there with Walker Little and his kind of regression. But Trevor is, he's a guy we're locked into as far as the contract. I think at least for a couple more years, though, they will give this a shot. But we already have a GM here that's Jay. He's not afraid to ship out people from the previous regime. So I don't think we're anywhere close to that if things go bad, because of the money. But he's certainly under a microscope, and this is a year that that people are really going to be keeping an eye on. So, and hey, Vez, thanks for joining the chats. Our buddy Stosh.
No, we love. We love having fans of all kinds here.
So I do want to talk about the offense and how it's been clicking lately. I'm looking at the stats, and they're currently 15th in passing yards, 11th in rushing yards, and points for. They're scoring about 23.2 yards per or points per game. How are you guys feeling about the offense as a whole? I mean, they're winning games, obviously, in being 4-2. But what are your guys's reactions to how that offense is clicking?
Yeah, I'll start this one. I like it from the standpoint, and this has always been what they've hammered. And excuse my light just went out here, my for brightness here, but it's all good. But yeah, I like it from the standpoint of they've hammered wanting to run the ball more and doing it efficiently. And of course, up until last week or the game against the Seahawks, they were able to pretty much do it effectively. Now, a lot of that is I would say the standout in the run game, Robert Hainsey. He was injured. They had to start a rookie there in Jonah Monheim, who was faring pretty well for a rookie. But I think where the discrepancy comes in at between him and Robert Hainsey is that Robert Hainsey is a significantly better run in the run game, essentially. Like he's like second. I looked at a stat the other day. He is second in run in winning in run matchups on the offensive line. And I think Zabel from Seattle might be first. So that just kind of shows you the discrepancy there. But going back to what I was saying, all of that said, they really hammered from the beginning, and you could tell it was transparent because they wanted to get Makari. That's who they got in free agency. They got Hainsey, who I already mentioned, and they started making putting their own touch on this offensive line in terms of being able to get that run game going. So that's what I like about it in terms of helping Trevor Lawrence, because that's what he's always needed. And that's why I've always been lenient for him, because he's never really had the run game that some young quarterbacks have had to start their career. Like he's never really had that luxury until now, and Liam Cohen coming into the picture. And I also did expect somewhat of a slow start, because that was kind of the case with Baker Mayfield. And it's just they have a lot on his plate, but these last 2 weeks he's really come into his own. The one pick that he did throw was a pass interference that the whole nation is questioning like what did the referee see there. So like he's toned down the picks, and I even told Phil like I can envision him around, and I was right. I mean, at least for now, knock on wood. I can envision him starting to come into his own around this time when we play the Rams. And, I was a little bit late on that, I guess. But that being said, like I envisioned that around this timeline. And yeah, these last two games have been nice for him. And I think like once they get Hainsey back, that'll help too with the efficiency of this offense.
So is that a lot of like mechanical related stuff that he's just growing into? Is it the playbook, combination of both? Also, is he like scrambling less, more, or how's that exactly all breaking down?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a little bit of both, and also Liam encouraging him to be more of a runner. I mean, right a couple like days ago, Jay, that the run in the national championship game was going viral. Like Trevor has that ability. I don't know if this is the case anymore, but I think going into the season, a stat like that would surprise a lot of people is that Trevor Lawrence had more rushing touchdowns than Lamar Jackson. So he is a runner. He is able to get into the end zone. He has that athleticism, and you kind of see him being more comfortable with taking off because he's got the ability. I mean, he's huge and he can run like a gazelle. Like use that ability, and Liam Cohen has kind of like unlocked that in him. And we're seeing less of he always had this tendency, and Jaguar fans will know this, right, Jay? The spin. He would try to spin out of trouble, and we've pretty much eliminated that, which is good. Like it would really, really frustrate Jaguar fans, and we've seemed to have eliminated that, where he would try to get out of pressure and just spin into a sack. So he's definitely got better. The awareness is starting to show up, and the fruits of their labor, as far as those mechanics, are starting to pay off as far as the work that they're doing. So it's encouraging. But again, unfortunately, because of the offensive line issues in the last game, it's a game that performance-wise people aren't going to talk about because the Seahawks just dominated them on the line.
Well, that's probably the next big question is can that offensive line hold up against this Rams defensive line? We have two of the best probably edge rushers right now in the league with Byron Young and Jared Verse on top of our interior line. Like, how are you guys going to feel about that offensive line trying to protect Lawrence?
Yeah, I don't feel great about Walker Little lining up against Jared Verse for sure. Like if you all go and watch the 22, I don't know if y'all like to watch all 22, but watch Walker Little in the last game. And the thought of him lining up against Jared Verse in that line scares me, quite frankly. And
Jared Verse is like licking his lips right now, like after watching tape.
He definitely is. And I think like what you can see though is them, they probably try to move the pocket a little bit to get away from Verse, and they'll, line some tight ends up over there to help Walker Little probably, if I had to have a crystal ball on it. But yeah, I don't think they're too thrilled about what that matchup would look like. And, again, they may very well have to put Jonah Monheim, who, again, we expect to be the starting center for this team one day. But in terms of them need to run the ball, right now he's just not there, whereas Hainsey is. But they might have to start him again from the perspective of Hainsey is dealing with, I think it's a hamstring, right? And you don't rush back from hamstrings. Yeah, he traveled with the team. But the key with hamstrings, and I'm not a doctor here, but I've seen this many, many times, the key with hamstrings is you don't want to come back too early from it, re-agitate it, and then you got to go on IR, basically, is what happens at that point. Because when you re-agitate it, chances are you're going to be out 4 weeks or more. So I wouldn't be shocked, and I haven't like gotten any insider's knowledge on this or anything like this, but I wouldn't be shocked that Hainsey wouldn't start again, and they would have to put out the rookie again, although Hainsey did travel. So we are not too thrilled about this matchup in terms of, the trenches, at least on the offensive side of the ball.
No, I definitely agree with your point there with not wanting to rush the hamstring, but you could definitely see a similar game plan from you guys that Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers did, where they did a lot of bootlegs away from their weaker edge linemen and away from Jared Verse. Now, how often and how much you can really use and abuse that we'll kind of see during the game. But a lot of teams have had to just go pure quick pass game against us. I want to say, Zach, really only the Colts tried to do a few shots, and they had 2 interceptions when they did. So it's been really tough sledding for teams that just try to sit there and have deep receiving games or like deep developing routes. So how has your receiving game been? And like, can you guys do a lot of quick dink and dunk stuff and anything of that nature?
Yeah, they're certainly capable of. We've seen it with Travis Etienne, De'Ami Brown, and Travis Hunter here early on in the game to kind of varying levels of success. What we're seeing a lot of as far as with Travis Hunter is they throw the ball out to him and then depend on him to make a play. And typically 1 or 2 times he will make a guy miss in a game, but like you can't just like keep going back to that. So they're starting to get Brian Thomas Jr. and Trevor Lawrence back on track. I mean, they really didn't play together very much last year. So I think that's why you saw some of those early growing pains. And then also, BTGA was just not himself early on with a lot of the drops. And he definitely came under fire with the fan base. But, I assume he was definitely going through something as far as personally, but also, when you get in your head, when he had that, the ball, the quote unquote hospital ball that people are talking about. That's the internet's new favorite term in the preseason. I think that stuck with him for a little bit, but he did have one of his best games in the year last week, got into the end zone for the first time. So they have the ability in the play calling. We've seen it, Jay, right, with De'Ami Brown and Travis Hunter to kind of try and create space and get the ball out pretty quickly. But we definitely saw them trying to have more things that developed downfield against Seattle, and that did not work out well. So would be very interested, Jay, to see like what that game plan is going to be because of the things that, Zach and Ashton are mentioning right now.
Yeah, I mean, and it looks like he's doing Trevor Lawrence is doing a really good job of spreading the ball around. He's not other than, it looks like maybe a little too heavy-handed on Brian Thompson Jr. for a little bit, but other than that, it seems like he's really trying to spread the ball around, and which I think could be a pain point for the Rams if they're not 100% sure who he's going to go to. Because our biggest issue from a defensive side for the Rams is our secondary.
Yeah, Parker Washington has been. Sorry about that, Ashton. Parker Washington also, I would imagine, would get more involved as well. He's been probably honestly, up until more recently, Parker Washington was probably our most reliable receiver during the season up until recently with Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, it's really been outside the hash marks with Akella Witherspoon getting hurt. We don't have a tall physical corner that can really fight with some of those big alpha wide receivers. And you see especially a lot of yak giving up on the boundaries. So that's going to have to be where you guys kind of live. And that's the 2 games that we have lost, the kind of collapsing against the Eagles a lot because of penalties, but also because of big boundary plays by A.J. Brown. And then the 49ers was basically exploiting that. Every other team that's tried to do anything else, this Rams defense has been really, really stingy with and been able to get instant pressure because this defensive front is a top 5 defensive front in the NFL. It's the best front, and we said this going into the season, best front we've seen with the Rams, including any that we had with Aaron Donald. That's how much respect we had for this front going into the year.
Yeah, and for as far as your guys is concerned, I think that if you guys can keep the pressure off and give Trevor Lawrence enough time, you're gonna hit our weakness, which is our secondary. If he's pressured to throw, then obviously I think our secondary can manage. But if he's given time and he's able to make accurate throws, I think he's going to be okay. I always worry between the 50-yard line and the 30-yard line of you guys making an explosive play and scoring more points that way than if you're in the red zone. I think the Rams have a really good red zone defense. And yes, you may take up a lot of yards, but if we get you within the 20, more often than not, you're going to have to try to settle for a field goal. And that's something that the Rams have been. I mean, even since Aaron Donald in the Super Bowl year, the bend don't break mentality has been the strongest, with the Rams.
Yeah, and Cam Curl and Lake have played phenomenal football so far this season. Both of our safeties are really on a heater. Curl's made a few good plays, but you could say Lake is playing an all-pro season. He has been that good. So that's where we kind of said on the mid-level, those 10 to 20-yard throws, you're going to have to live in those, and hopefully your line can kind of give you just enough time to get those off, and a lot of creative play designs, which I'm sure we will see from Liam Cohen.
I'm going to throw this one up here, asking us, do we have any pressing concerns matchup-wise? Obviously, we kind of said that secondary. The dinks and dunks do tend to hurt us up until, like that 20, within the 20-yard line and the goal line. Ashton, do you have any concerns that you would say? And then I'll give you mine.
I would say for Yak-wise, it's probably ETN receiving-wise, getting him like some creative screens or some like quick passing options. I don't know how good of a receiving back he is, but he is dynamic with the ball in his hands, and I really do think he can make some of our corners miss and get some big chunk yardage, and that's been what's kind of killing us. McCaffrey kind of killed us there too.
Does he have a receiving yard? Does he have a reception?
I'm sure he does.
Oh yeah. And so Travis Etienne, when the guy that we don't say his name, the Ohio guy, when he was with the team, that was the big deal with Irvin. I just said it on accident. But that was a big deal.
We'll bleep that out.
Right, there we go. We wanted him because they wanted to use him a lot as a receiver, and I think that's Liam's big thing too, as well as using him in the screen game, because we came into this situation with Liam with a lot of rumors surrounding ETN, like will they trade him? And when he started to pop off as he was especially with the screen game, and he's a much better runner in this scheme than he was with Doug's scheme, and of course it's easy to do that when nobody's like in the backfield 2 yards right in your face as soon as you get the handoff. But one thing that Liam has done, aside from getting him to become a better runner, is getting him out in space for those screens. And like it feels like when we were with the pass regime, that was something that just Doug and Press just struggled with, and it always puzzled me because I felt like that was a good, like a big part of ETN's game to begin with. And Liam realized that, and now we're in a situation where we're talking about like we're going into next year, ETN will be a free agent. Like I know like there's that stigma of not paying running backs, but he's looked so good in this scheme to me, to the point it's like you got to at least reach out to the guy and talk to him about keeping him, just because of how he is as a receiving threat and with yards after the catch.
I would say my biggest concern as far as the matchup will be how much time can Trevor Lawrence and that offense take away from the Rams. The Rams tend to really, they don't do well, like usually in the first half. So, we watched, with it, whether it was the 49ers game or even the Baltimore game, if you just dink and dunk those 5 to 10 yards here and there or whatever and eat up that clock, that's bad news for the Rams. If you don't give Stafford more time, he could come back in the fourth quarter, but it will be enough time to kind of go over the edge. So that's probably my concern is, are you guys going to eat up so much clock that Stafford doesn't have enough time to do what he needs to do?
Yeah, and I did feel like going into this matchup with these two teams, they're very I kind of said it was a silly matchup because both of these teams can beat any team any given week from what I've seen, but they also can lose to any team any given week with some of the boneheaded mistakes, penalties, and then especially with us, our special teams has been kind of a dumpster fire between field goal accuracy issues, just big mistakes blocking field goals, just complete whiffing on blocks and field goals and getting those. Like that's the main reason we lost the Philly game. And then we've had big penalties taking away special teams plays. it's a lot of silliness going around that's kind of holding this Rams team from being a 6-0 team. Just small. It's not the offense for the most part, and it's not the defense. Both have like DVOAs, a top 5 units. It's just the small things that really add up to losses that were kind of avoidable for the most part.
Yeah, I have a question as well. Leading into the season, like everybody was making and I say everybody, it was national media, but making such a big deal about this Matthew Stafford injury as far as the back. Has that just been a nothing story, or is that something you guys continue to monitor?
I mean, I think every year we're always concerned about Stafford's back. I think every sack we hit, we feel like that might be the last one. But that dude is so freaking tough that, again, I think we've said this multiple times. You're going to have to bring a stretcher out. Like, he has to be removed from the game before he won't be able to play anymore. That's just the kind of guy he is. Yeah, it just feels like they were just being super cautious with Stafford.
Yeah, he was around, I think team said like 60, 70%, like completely healthy when we won the Super Bowl going into that Super Bowl playoff run. So really, he's definitely someone who, for the most part, can tough it out and kind of grit it. But, you guys should know that. You guys probably envy at his physical capability. Trevor Lawrence can't run like Stafford, so
Pure athlete, pure speed, Jay.
Right.
yeah, pure speed.
To add on
Watch
to
out
the
for the
Stafford
speed.
thing too, I didn't mean to cut anybody off, but
No,
I mean, it makes sense. That's the Matthew Stafford. I know I'm a Georgia Bulldog fan, so that's the makeup of a Georgia Bulldog player. You literally will have to drag one of them off of the field. Like, I was concerned when Trayvon Walker jacked his wrist up that he was going to try and like come back into the game. Like, that's just how they're wired. And also, he's from Texas too. Stafford is from Texas, so they just are built different. When you have those two stigmas about you just being from Texas and playing Texas football and playing for UGA, man, like, I'm not surprised at what you guys are saying about him and his toughness, honestly.
Yeah, and he is like so far had really an MVP. Last week was kind of weird game, but he's had an MVP caliber season. He has been dealing it for the most part. He starts off cold in most first quarters, and then he gets hot. And when he gets on a streak, he's a very streaky quarterback, and he's just nailing wide receivers, throwing no-look passes, just delivering 30-yard bombs pretty accurately. And biggest problem last week was a lot of wide receiver drops. Really, he was in the latter half of that game really dealing, and that's going to have to be something you guys have to try and knock him out of his flow, get him kind of second guessing and stuff. But he's seen a lot, man, and if you're going to play a lot of zone, he'll be able to dice it up. He'll talk like that 2-2 bomb we had against the Colts. That was just a play that they put together on the sideline that he was seeing the coverage. He recognized it, and he's like, next time we see this, just take that fade deep down the field and I'll nail you. And he did it. So
talk to me about your guys' defense a little bit, because again, this is a Rams offense and on paper looks amazing. You have Matthew Stafford. Obviously, we don't know the status of what Puka Nacua is going to be like. We can talk about that in a minute. We have Devontae Adams, Kyron Williams, Tyler Higbee. Like, we have these players that on paper, we should be an explosive offense. We've struggled in the first half. We've come out kind of full blast kind of in the second half. How is your defense? How are you guys feeling about this defense going against this Rams offense, which on paper looks amazing, but hasn't shown all of its
capability?
Capability, yeah.
You want to go, Jay?
Yeah, I'll go. So yeah, well, first and foremost, man, like, shout outs to Anthony Campanile, the defensive coordinator, because that guy is a culture changer. You want to talk about culture changers? He is the definition of it. And here we are, 6 weeks into the season, and we're scared we're going to lose the guy because he'll be a head coach one day. Luckily for us, The league doesn't like defensive coordinators as head coaches because they always are looking for a way to fix the quarterback problem that the league will have and always will have. And they don't lean on defensive coordinators for that. But that's the first thing I want to say is Anthony Campanile. He's been a culture changer for this team. Now they are a little bit banged up because, Trayvon Walker, he played in the last game, but it was like a limited amount of snaps. So, they're their best when Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen can be on the field together. And that was something that we've been noticing, these last 2 weeks of the turnovers haven't come as easily as they were, right? They were on this little tear where they were getting 3 turnovers a game, right? And they surpassed their total from last year within like 2 games, like that. That's how, and they were leading the league in turnovers, still are actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But the turnovers have slowed down, and a lot of that I believe is because Trayvon Walker, he's been limited to, not there because of the injury that he's been dealing with. I think the weakness would be for this team is the secondary, right? And that was something that was exposed last week. Now, what helps to mitigate that is they need to play Travis Hunter like 90% of the defensive snaps because he has been lights out at corner. And if you notice, like when he's on the field, he's not having any issues. Like people aren't daring to throw that way. And there was the one, I think it was to Jamar Chase or Higgins, where he got caught for a pass interference, which was questionable. But aside from that, like Travis Hunter looks like if you just solely put him at cornerback and just do him or put him in at spot duties at wide receiver, he looks like he would, definitely be the top corner taken in the draft if they gave him that opportunity to play like 90% of the defensive reps. So that would help. And, I did see a notification pop up on my phone saying that they do plan to up his reps. And that makes sense because they traded Tyson Campbell recently. And, Greg Newsom's new to the team. So he's still learning some things and, he's learning how to gel with the rest of the team. So there is that. But I think that would help. And then lastly, I would say a strength for the team is linebacker, which you guys kind of caught us at a good week because Devin Lloyd didn't travel with the team. But to kind of echo that sentiment, like the good thing about it, and me and Phil were talking about this last night, is behind him, Ventrell Miller is a respectable, linebacker as the second string linebacker. So that's a guy to watch. I would say for this game is Ventrell Miller. Foye Oluokun, I mean, he's a tackling machine. And, this guy's led the tackle for consecutive years, at some point in his career, not necessarily now, but smart as all get out. He'll be next to Ventrell to help Ventrell, who's a younger player. But Ventrell Miller is definitely one of those guys to watch. Although, it's kind of hard to replace the outer body experience that Devin Lloyd is having. He's playing at a defensive player of the year caliber level. But still, I think he will be able to maintain and hold his own. And I think he'll be a guy that has a good game this week.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely critical for on the Rams side of things. Like, can the tight ends get going and kind of see and test that second string linebacker? And our tight ends, for the most part, outside of last week, haven't been doing much. Higbee's been dealing with the injury. Our second round rookie hasn't really gotten a lot of play. His snap share has gone up every week. So they might try to lean on him with Puka potentially being out or not, him and Whittington. You were about to say, Phil?
Yeah, we bringing up this Travis Hunter thing, because we're 6 weeks in to this experiment as far as playing both sides of the football. And, shout out to our guy Wig, right, Jay, from Locked On Jaguars we're not seeing him in the game at like crucial points on offense or defense. And that needs to change. So like a big third down, where is he on offense or defense, either side of the football? And we're not seeing him. And, they alluded to it, like when they drafted him, like they weren't really sure how this was going to look like. Well, we're approaching the midway point of the season, and he has the 1 or 2 plays each game where he, you see why they traded that capital in order to get him. Well, that needs to, that needs to step up. That we need to see him get more reps on the defensive side, like Jay is mentioning, and then have him spot on offense, because if he comes into the game a couple times on offense and makes the big play similar to the one we saw like in the Monday Night Football game, then that's great. But he's been really solid on defense, and a lot of people, Jay included, think he is better on the defensive side of the football. So as they start feeling this out, and especially with, trading away Tyson Campbell and Newsome getting acclimated to the defense, like, you got to lean on him. Like, that's why you brought him in, and you think that he is, would have been the top corner in the draft, and like, play him out there more. So we definitely need to see more of that sooner rather than later.
So, Phil, would you feel like it would be better if they kind of reverse that and had him only out there on defensively and offensively on third down and like some second downs, and try to manage it that way? Have him in the critical situations on both sides versus doing the opposite, which it does kind of make you wonder, like, is he still just trying to learn the playbook on both sides and grasping it fully?
Yeah, and because here's the thing, if he is spending time in two rooms, offensively and defensively, that means he's not spending enough time in one or the other. If he's splitting time between learning how to play the position, then that's going to be detrimental to his development. And at one point, as much as we would love for him to split these snaps, and that's what he wants to do as a player, like, at some point, like, the coaching staff has to step in and be like, hey, this is where you're going to benefit the team the most. I don't think you ever completely remove him from one side of the football or the other, but you do have to start playing him where it benefits the team the most. And right now, that would definitely be secondary. I think offensively, you can kind of mask some of those deficiencies with some of the play calling. De'Ami Brown needs to be a lot better. Parker Washington, like we said, has been a really solid player. But defensively feels like where we need him the most right now. And I would like to see them adjust that accordingly.
Yeah, and to add on to that, his ball skills are phenomenal, regardless of the position, but especially as a cornerback. When you pop on the film of him, like when he was coming out of Colorado, a lot of those plays were him getting a jump on the quarterback from playing the cornerback position, right? And he's shown that too. I went to one of the training camps, and it was just simply hard to throw on the kid. And I know exactly why it is that way. It's because he spends time in the wide receiver room to the point where he knows how wide receivers come out of their breaks. He knows the technical aspect of what a wide receiver looks like. And we even, I think it was Albert Breer, or one of the insiders in America here, even said, sometimes he would, go to the offensive side and help Shador understand cornerback tendencies, right? And how, they react and what have you. So, like, he is a Swiss Army knife, but long story short, his ball skills, regardless of the position, are phenomenal, but his ball skills are especially sharp on the defensive side. Like, he had like 3 pass breakups in the practice I went to, and like Trevor it just got to a point where Trevor was like, you know what, I can't even throw over there, man. I'll just go the other way.
I want to throw this up here real quick because I'm curious about this. The penalties. I'm looking. You guys have had a total of 52 penalties so far in 6 weeks, 409 yards caused by that. What is happening with the penalties?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually have the stat here from our buddy Daniel Griffiths. 65 flags, most in the league, 52 penalties, second most, 34 offensive penalties, 18 pre-snap penalties, and then as Vez is also mentioning in the chat, drops 16, which is also the most in the league as well. So yeah, we're seeing that's where a lot of the frustration for me has come, is in the pre-snap stuff, whether it be from Trev or from the offensive line. And we saw 2 big penalties from Anton Harrison last week, and he's one of their more consistent guys. And this Trev having trouble getting the play out, like we saw that, illegal shifts, false starts, things of that nature. And there's a point, like, I think, where it's like, oh yeah, growing pains, but like, these numbers are shocking. Like, you just had that reaction, Ashton, and it's like, it's the correct reaction, because at some point you have to see over the course of time, you have to see those go down, and they're staying consistent. And that is something it comes down to discipline. It comes down to familiarity with the playbook. Travis Hunter is long, he lines up off sides and negates a big play that would have been a touchdown to Brian Thomas Jr. completely changes the way that the game is being played for the rest of that, for the rest of last Sunday. So yeah, they got to fix all of that. And the concerning part for me, right, Jay, is that it hasn't been getting better over week to week. It's staying the same.
Exactly. And also too, getting the play in and getting it to everybody else quick enough, which, I'm not saying that falls on coaching, but also we're seeing this issue where Trevor will try an audible, like 5 seconds with 5 seconds left on the clock. And it's like, bro, you have to communicate things to the offensive line. That has to go out to the wide receivers. 5 seconds isn't enough time to be audible. And that was one of the issues that bit them in the behind on Monday Night Football. Like, so like they have to get that aspect of things fixed, because if you eliminate the penalties that they've had, or even, as Phil said, cut them in half, you're looking at a team that's probably undefeated, right, at that point. Or if not undefeated, a one-loss team. We definitely would have won that game against the Bengals. We're looking at a one-loss team. But then again, when you look at the Seahawks game, the rate that the penalties were coming in there, yeah, we probably would be undefeated. And until they get that fixed, they won't reach their full potential, unfortunately.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're going up against the Rams team who's fourth in penalty as far as flags go, 3 of them that are third for ones that counted against them. But yeah, that has to be cleaned up if you guys want to be successful. I mean, you guys are 4-2 and have that high of penalties, so you guys are doing something right on as far as scoring points and playing good defense. But yeah, you guys got to get that cleaned up.
It's just really hard to overcome when you get in those situations, especially against like elite defenses or anything of that nature.
To be fair, they were also playing the Chiefs, so probably 20 of them came because they were just playing the Chiefs. So
right, yeah, we all saw the report. Yeah, it's
oh my god,
12 men in the field at all times for the Chiefs.
Hey, surprisingly, Zach, that was the game where we had the least amount of penalties, right?
Oh my gosh,
that's how we won that game. Ultimately, was
not shooting yourselves in the foot.
Exactly, and they had 12 penalties on the other side of the ball. And it's like, hey, see what happens when you you don't rack up all of these penalties. Like, you're talking about, dare I say, a team that could go deep in the playoffs if you don't have these penalties, right? But until they get fixed, man, me and Phil will have to have these conversations week in and week out on the pod about it.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely have a feeling that both of these teams are going to be in the postseason. I feel like your defense is too talented to not at least get into the wild card. And then especially with this Rams team, like they have some stuff they need put together. They're not a perfect team. But again, you don't want your team to be hot now and then get cold. You rather have the opposite. You just have to be good enough to not take your chances, get hot in December, and then hopefully everything goes well in January and February. But what are your guys' kind of feelings about the division? I guess you can cap off your game for this game, but for the rest of the season, how are you guys feeling?
Yeah, we feel pretty good because I'm going to bring up the schedule right now, but in our preseason episode, we kind of highlighted okay, well, we need to prepare for possibly kind of a rough start to this year. All of their really difficult matchups were in the beginning of the season, of course, including this one. But Seattle, Kansas City, they never play well in San Francisco. So we, weren't sure about that. A Houston divisional game is always tough. And then Cincinnati, which I guess is a game, they definitely should have won. But we were talking about coming into the bye, Jay, at what best case, kind of a ceiling of a 4 and a 3-4, 4-3 area. That was what we would hope. So, and they could be on the verge of 4-3, hopefully not losing back-to-back games. But when you look at the teams that they played early on, beating Houston, San Fran, and Kansas City, getting those 3 wins in a row was really a huge boost, because down the stretch your schedule does get a little bit easier. You still have to play the Chargers, who they've been a little bit all over the place, but really, obviously, the biggest surprise has been, 2 has been Houston, the decline of Houston. Maybe not so surprising to people that are here in the division, but the Colts for sure. But they have always been, I mean, Jay and I have always been a big fan of their front office. The Colts have always been built really well. They just had this rotating door at quarterback, and Daniel Jones has just seemed to slip in there very, very well. So I think if you down the stretch, if you split with Indianapolis, I mean, they the Colts haven't won in Jacksonville, Jay, right, since like what, early 2000s. So you really want to lean on that. You want to keep that going. So if you get a split with Indy, and then you have a divisional game to end the year against Tennessee at home, which Tennessee is their whole other thing as far as a mess. So you do have some winnable games down the stretch when you look at you play Houston again, you got Tennessee twice, you have the Jets, those games right there. So if they come out of this stretch, 4-3 out of the, heading into the bye, it's not, you certainly don't want to lose back-to-back games, but it's better than we thought they would be, Jay, because we figured they would maybe get hot a little bit more on the backside of this schedule. And, coming out with a winning record, coming out of London would still be solid.
Yeah, Ashton, I'm looking at their schedule. They could lose this game and be totally fine. Totally fine.
For sure. And we're going to learn a lot about the Colts here soon. They're about to enter their big test as well. Yep. So those things could even out.
That's what I was going to add is the hardest part of our schedule is behind us. The Colts, not so much, right? And they got to play us twice, as Phil said. And their track record in Jacksonville is just tremendous. Like, I think they get off the bus just knowing that they're going to lose to us. But that being said, in terms of like just to add on to the whole division thing, me and Phil, when looking at the division in terms of just all four teams, me and Phil could kind of sense the Houston thing because what they did, and we would know what a bad offensive line looks like. We looked at many of them, right? And all of the moves they made to their offensive line just didn't do it for me, right? Bringing in Cam Robinson and let the national pundits tell it like, hey, Houston will win a second division title. And look, we haven't gotten to that point yet to see what the final result is, but what they did for their offensive line just wasn't doing it for me.
It didn't make sense.
It
didn't make sense
at all.
Because when we were previewing the Texans game, like we had some Texans fans trying to tell me that rookie was going to be able to like one-on-one Jared Verse. I was like, you haven't watched Jared Verse tape. I'm like, you have not watched Jared Verse tape much, and he's only getting better. He is an all-pro level edge. I was like, that's not going to work out well, and it didn't really work out well for them much when that happened. So it's funny you brought that up. It just means, Zach, we're like, it doesn't make sense. This line does not look like it'll be able to do anything and be able to protect against anyone. And yeah, it's kind of turned out that way for the most part.
I definitely think Trevor Lawrence is going to have to turn on his wheels a little bit. He's going to have to pull that gazelle out of him, his spiritual gazelle out, because, you got Jared Verse on one side, but you got Byron Young, who's, you guys have had 8 sacks. He alone has had 7.5 sacks. So like you're dealing with like a two-headed monster from coming at you from both sides. And Trevor Lawrence is going to have to use some magic to kind of get around both of those guys, and that offensive line needs to hold strong to give them some time.
Zach and Ashton, I have a question, a little bit off of the field type of thing here. I've always been curious about this. First and foremost, thank you for sending us James Gladstone, by the way. It's night and day different than Trent Baalke and what he's done for the culture. But on him, when you look at the behind the scenes things that the Rams put out with him, you could tell there was something special with him. But to my recollection, he never received a interview for being a GM, if I can recall. But nonetheless, like the moment he walked into the building, Tony Boselli, the EVP, and Shad Khan could sense something, and of course Liam could sense something special with him. Could y'all talk about him, and like, could you kind of see the writing on the wall with him being a GM, sometime in his future? And just also too, if you would just could you kind of elaborate on some things about that you think that he would pick up on from Les Snead, because we're already like seeing like that mentality of like F them picks and all that, and we love it, by the way. But could you just kind of elaborate on some of the things you think he picked up from Les Snead during his time there?
Yeah. You want me to go ahead, Ashton? I can give
Yeah,
my
yeah,
thoughts.
you go first. Yeah.
Okay, so I love Gladstone. I think I was heartbroken that he left us,
Yeah.
because I truly believe that he was Lesney's right-hand man. I think he brought this young, because he was really young when the Rams brought him on into being in his role, and I think he's brought a lot of statistical knowledge and helped Lesney kind of form more of the reasons why they don't go travel to Indianapolis for the draft prospects and things like that. They were able to use a lot more analytics, and I think Gladstone helped bring that in there. And so I think he's going to basically take everything that he's learned from Les Snead and just amplify it. We always talk about who's the tree of Sean McVay, but I think eventually you'll hear about this tree of that takes you back to Les Snead, and I think Gladstone is just going to be that first star from that position.
Yeah, I mean, you already see it with the Lions and the complete redo of their culture and their front office with a lot of the Rams elements in there. But I definitely agree with you there, Zach. I think Gladstone will be sorely missed, especially during the draft process. He was such a key and critical element to a lot of like getting Cooper Kupp, getting Puka, getting a lot of these players in 3rd to 5th round, where the Rams have kind of made their bread and butter of getting these superstars, where a lot of teams just don't take a chance, and the Rams are very analytical, and they are very much on the cutting edge consistently of how they look at draft prospects, how their front office is organized and is ran, how they look at different test data, how they look at now college data with the geotagging and stuff like that. It is just totally different than like your unc's or your grandpa's old GM way of like, oh, that guy runs a fast 40. He doesn't bench press 40 times. I'm not going to draft that guy in the first 3 or 4 rounds. And the Rams are like, oh, you're going to let Cooper Kupp fall to the 3rd? We're going to get him a first-round level talent. You're going to let Puka fall to the 5th, and he's an all-pro talent? We're going to take him. And it's just a different mentality and a different way of looking at stuff, very new age. And he is, I think you guys have already seen this, he will make mistakes, and this is Snead specifically. He'll make mistakes, but they are very quickly to admit their mistakes, and they move on from their mistakes. And they're not afraid of just like, they won't keep a first-round pick or second-round pick level player or someone they just paid if they're not producing, and they'll move on from that. And that's something you don't see in a lot of front offices and people take for granted.
High risk, high reward. How you want to roll that dice and take a chance? They're going to do it.
We're seeing that right now. It's funny you mentioned that of them not holding on to a player too long, right? We seen them ship out Tyson Campbell. And what helps too is that we have an owner with deep pockets, right? So, that helps with the money part of it. But, they got Tyson Campbell out of here. They've gotten a lot of Trent Baalke's guys out of here. Tank Bigsby, yeah. A lot of these Trent Baalke guys who fits that description of the GM that you mentioned, the old school GM to the T, like he believe in like all these measurables and all of this. And then you have Gladstone who's pushing a whole different message and is able to find a kid like Jonah Monheim in the 7th round and find a kid like LaQuint Allen, in the 7th round, and Bashal Tootin in the 4th round, right? So one thing I'll take from this conversation, I also feel they're letting us know here, both Ashton and Zach, we're going to get a star receiver in the 3rd to 5th round in the next draft. That's what I'm taking from this conversation.
I mean,
You
Glad,
can reference us next time when that happens.
Yeah.
You reference us.
Yeah.
yeah. You just know, like, when he sees something, I think he's one of the guys who ID'd Puka after the scouts brought him the scouting reports. And of course, McVay jokes about it now, but he's like, yeah, we would have taken him in the first or second round if we knew how good he was.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you can definitely see it throughout the entire front office. Like, they now do analytics with just the food they eat, their workout routines, working with their chefs, and it goes to so many layers and levels that he changed the culture. Snead did. And when he got McVay in, they were able to grow, and they're continued to grow even now. But you can really tell it's turned the franchise around the 7, 8 years we've had those two. And I think you guys will see some good things out of the two you got. I really do have a lot of respect for both those guys.
Yeah, and I'll finish up with the fact that it's going to come down to your coach and your GM and how well they can work together. I will say that I was kind of shocked that you guys picked up Liam Cohen. When he was our offensive coordinator, obviously that was our really bad year post Super Bowl. Not necessarily all his fault, a lot of injuries that happened, but he didn't impress me, and it felt like he was escaping to go back to college sports. So then when he came back, I don't know, I just had some mixed feelings about that. But he has a lot of experience in that Rams facility with Gladstone there at the exact same time. And as long as they can build that relationship, somewhat close to what Sean McVay and Les Snead can do. I mean, you watch them in the war room, they're together, they're talking, they're trying to figure out how to fit the pieces together. Not just the GM doing his thing and making deals on his side, and the coach is just coaching the players and stuff like that. They are collaborating together, and these teams need to start figuring that out, that if the front office and the coaching staff can't talk to each other or don't talk to each other, it's going to start imploding very quickly. You can only change culture from both sides to make it real.
You got draft for culture too. That's a big thing Snead has done, is draft for culture. Now, do watch out for the contract extensions. I will say Snead, his history with some of the contract extensions hasn't really worked out. We've worked through a lot of dead money, but he, like I said, he pivots off of stuff and they make moves. So.
Yeah, we're about to get a test about that right away with the Devin Lloyd contract. They declined his 5th-year option heading into this, and now he's a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. So they are going to find out very, very quickly how he negotiates. Yeah. So and to touch on what you guys were saying as far as like an old school mentality, like that's what Jacksonville and specifically Shad Khan was just so stuck in for the longest time. Getting back to our AFC Championship run, it's Doug Marrone, it's bringing in Tom Coughlin, it's bringing in the Ohio State guy, and then Doug Peterson, a retread. So like we for the longest time, fans and Jay and I on our show were always like, go young, please, like just bring in the people that have been learning and seeing how football works now. Stop going back to the past. And that's why we were so afraid when there were these Bill Belichick to Jacksonville rumors happening in the offseason, because that would be a move that Shad Khan loves. Bill Belichick, man, he loves the Patriots organization. So it was like a thing people were very much afraid of happening. And, luckily things went the way that they did.
You don't want that UNC experience?
Yeah,
they're having so much fun up there.
We could have had the what was it, the 60 Minutes interview, whatever that weird interview was with his
yeah.
We've had way too many circus shows here, man. The Urban Meyer at the bar thing, we can't afford another Bill Belichick situation, what he's going through with his girl. Like,
well, what do you guys expect having a pool in your guys's stadium?
They do promote a party atmosphere. That's true.
I mean, that's what you guys promote. Like, hey, I could go hang out in the party.
Hey, the Diamondbacks did it first, and I think they have like 2 World Series wins. So, like, there's proof of concept there.
Yeah, and Zach, to add on to what you said about like teams needing to figure out that whole aspect of GM and coach relationships. That's what's hurt the league for so many years. Is you have a coach who is like, I only have 3 years here. and I need to win immediately, and I need quick results. And that has always clashed with a GM's mindset, who is like, well, I'm here to build for the future in most cases. And we kept seeing that especially with Trent Baalke. He would always end up with an odd pairing with somebody who it felt like he had no connection with in the first place. And he was always in a position where, and this is just kind of how Trent was wired. He's wired to just cover his own back, right? And that puts you in a position where the coach is always left, and I don't want to defend Doug Peterson, but left hung out to dry. So yeah, to have Liam and James who know each other and are, just willing to bounce ideas off of each other, and not look at it from how a traditional coach and a traditional GM looks at it, in a sense that GMs look into the future and coaches look into the present. To have two that won't kind of look at football from that lens is going to be, it's going to be phenomenal. And I think we're seeing it pay. And this is why I really like the hire in the first place, because I look at Brad Holmes, which y'all mentioned with the Lions, and it's like, why wouldn't you want that? Like, we know we needed two special individuals. I said this on Twitter. We needed two special individuals to change the losing history the Jags have, because it's just been there for so long. And just, you can't just hire anybody to eliminate that. And that's what the Lions did. And I think the Jags kind of learned from that. And credit to Tony Boselli for helping veer them away from, their old thought process as well.
Yeah, and I
go ahead, Ashton.
I was just gonna say, it's another thing too. Going young, it's not guaranteed to work. Like, it's never guaranteed to work going young on both. But I always say, when you accept mediocrity, you're gonna get mediocrity. And a lot of these teams just accept mediocrity, and you see it in the NFL year in year out. Take a swing. If you miss, then take another swing the other year. It's not like, are you really missing out if you have a 7 or 8 win season and you end up having 4 and you just took a swing and it didn't work out? Like, I don't, as a fan, I would rather see you try and miss completely than just give me bare average 7 wins. That's me personally, at least.
Yeah, and you don't have to get a young coach. I like, you have areas, like the Lions with Dan Campbell. I mean, he's not old, but he's not young either. Even with the Jets with Aaron Glenn, like, he's a good coach. He just has a terrible team. Like, there is a difference between having a good coach and a terrible team. But then you look at, like, Vegas and the Raiders and how, like, desperate they were. So they pulled in Pete Carroll, and, like, Pete Carroll just needs to retire. Like, he had his stint. He had his good stint in the Seahawks. But that's the same thing with Belichick. Like, you don't want to bring Belichick in. It kind of gives me a little bit more admiration for Tom Brady a little bit, because I think he really did more for the Patriots than Belichick's. But in general, like, you don't have to go young, but you have to have that communication. You have to have that goodwill between the front office and the coaching staff, and have a goal together and not separate. It can't always be the future, and it can't always be the present. It has to be a combination of both.
Yeah, sure. I have as we get towards the end of this, I have a couple of things. First, I want to correct a couple of things. When I said Trevor Lawrence has more rushing touchdowns than Lamar Jackson, not in full career since 2022. Trevor Lawrence and Lamar, at least heading into the season, they had the same amount of touch. I was like, as I said, I know that's not fully right. I know it's like some sort of variation of that statistic. And also the Colts haven't won in Jacksonville since 2014. So going on, over a decade since they've won here in Jacksonville. So I have to ask you guys a question, and maybe y'all's fan base will come for me. I want to say I have a lot of respect for the Rams, big Matthew Stafford fan. Have you guys yourselves? I know you're based on the East Coast, but have you guys yourselves been to a game at SoFi Stadium?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I went to that 2021 game. That was terrible. Again, the Urban Meyer year. So, and we went to the stadium, had really great seats. And it was one of the most uncomfortable seats I've ever sat in. Did you guys have the similar experience at stadium? And it's funny because I work for SoFi as well. My day job, I work for SoFi. So the seat we were in, I was like, man, this is not great. I just have to hear it from y'all if you had any similar feedback.
So I was for the most part leaning up. I wasn't really sitting down or standing up more than anything else. I
Yeah.
would say it could have been better. I had more issue with the food because I've been twice, and the
Really,
food
I
is
like the food.
it wasn't good when I went. Okay,
Okay.
I went in 21, and the food was better in 24. It wasn't great, but
Okay.
it was really bad the first year. So they did improve it a little bit, but
Okay.
yeah, my back. Just don't let Stafford sit in those seats. I'll just put it.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I always just think all stadium seats kind of suck.
Yeah.
I went to
Yeah.
the Titan Stadium a couple weeks ago, and their seats kind of suck. And I don't sit very. I get nervous. I don't even eat, so I don't even know I don't know what any of these stadiums' food actually tastes like because I'm just too nervous to eat the entire time I'm there. But yeah, SoFi's beautiful. It's just beautiful.
Oh yeah, as far as a building itself, like it's great architecturally. It looks great. It looks great, like from afar too. It's a good like landmark. But I guess as far as the food goes, I mean, the Jaguars have like a middle school cafeteria cater their food, so anything is better than what we get here in Jacksonville. So I think we all just need to go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium and just have like really cheap food.
So I'm based in Indianapolis, so I'm around Colts fans all the time. But their stadium's actually built really nice, and I mean, I've had food not when they are playing football, but at like concerts and stuff like that, and their food's pretty good there too. A lot of variety of food.
Yeah, here no, you get a dry hot dog and some old French fries, and it's not a great, and then it's $23 and $8 for a Gatorade. So change.
Oh, pay for
it was
pay for that pool.
$16 for a torpedo beer.
Yeah,
it was $50 for a meal for me and my wife at SoFi. So
yeah, sounds about right. So
yeah.
No, again, but yeah, beautiful stadium. Yeah, warm beer too. Yeah, but beautiful stadium. But again, see, we were sitting quite a bit because we had like we're on the second level and we were on the first row, so we got to sit. We didn't have anybody like in front of us. Also, there was no reason to stand for the Jaguars, so we were sitting down a lot.
Can I say when I went to the Titans game, they ran out of water for a short period of time. Like there was no iced water anywhere in any of the vending machines or anything. So like everyone was trying to fill up their plastic water bottle in the fountains. It was I think eventually they got more, but
I was just gonna ask
Not what you wanna
Zach
hear.
about the Titans stadium. I haven't been. I don't think Phil has either. But we've
That's
heard the
unbelievable.
stories and whatnot.
I'll go to
I
the
was
new
gonna
stadium.
ask
I don't
if
wanna
you
go to
went to the
Nissan
Titans. I think you told me that. But I was about to say, Zach, did you go to the Titan Stadium and live to tell about it? Like because we've heard the stories and we've seen the pictures and everything, man. And now now you adding to think about the water makes so much sense, man.
Yeah, no, it I mean, they're terrible. They were already when we were there, they were already over their coach by the time we sat down. But yeah, it was fine. We had no bad experience. I don't ever know if I really want to go to the Eagles because I think Philadelphia is way worse. Or especially a night game. I'll never go to probably a Philly night game ever. But nope, it was. I mean, I feel like there was a lot of Rams fans at the Titans game, so that kind of helps.
Yeah, that did. You're right, Vez. It did happen at a Jaguar game. It was an opening day game a couple of years ago. They also ran out of water. And it's in Florida in September, it's like 105 degrees and 110 on the field, so it gets pretty bad. So yeah,
I went to a game.
Always save your water bottles.
Yep.
The Rams at Carolina week 1, 2019, and that got up to 101, and they didn't run out of water, but they were like trying to hand out towels so people could like pour water on it, and people were passing out up in the top bleachers, and it was a miserable game anyways. But it's not fun going to those games and seeing all that craziness during the summer.
I one last thing about SoFi, and then we can wrap things up a little bit. But I will say that my one time in SoFi, I was the coldest ever at a stadium in SoFi. About how that airflow comes in. It was like a late November game in LA, and man, that breeze just comes right through that stadium, and it was chilly.
Yeah, that's you guys. Once the stadium gets built over here, you guys will have to come out because the new
No,
Jaguar
definitely.
Stadium is going to be very similar to SoFi concept wise. It's open air, so it's going to have that. They're really depending on that breeze. A lot of people, of course, here in Florida are hoping for a closed roof, and I think that would have been the way to go for sure. But the concept is going to be very similar to what they have there at SoFi. That was very much influenced by what's going on over there. So it is going to be nice to get that breeze coming in, especially in September. Even when I had season tickets, I would typically skip the September game just because it's so hot. So it'll be nice once that it comes.
Did you guys like the view from the seats? I feel like the view from all the seats is pretty nice. At least the
You mean when I went to SoFi?
Yeah. So
oh yeah, great seat, great view,
Mhm.
stadium atmosphere. Awesome. You get to see who was there when I went. It was like Dr. Dre was just just there at the game. It's the stuff you get when you're in Southern California, which is just unmatched, which is really cool. So there is to speak on what you were saying, Zach, as far as the coolest experience temperature wise was I went to AT&T Stadium and it's like 70 degrees with the air conditioning on. I was like, man, this is how to watch football. I don't care. I don't care about football purists. I want to be inside nice and comfortable.
I will say, I guess I should take that back. When I went to Detroit for the wild card game with the Rams, that was the coldest that it's ever been because it was like 0 degrees outside, and even though it was inside, I was still bundled up inside. But outside stadium, SoFi, which you think is weird, but it was cold. Guys, anything else you guys want to bring up?
No, I don't think so. Jay, you got anything else for him?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah, I think I covered everything I had.
You're gonna wake up early on Sunday morning and then
That's right. Well, luckily we're on the East Coast, so we don't have to wake up as early as those who.
Right.
Why don't you guys tell us, give some promotions of your guys' tags, social media tags, things like that.
Yeah, of course. So guys, thank you so much for having us. This was a whole lot of fun. We'll definitely have to do it again. So you can find us we're most active on social media over on Twitter at TD Jaguars Pod. You can follow myself and Jay as well. I'm at Filipino and Jay is at sportsgrind_Don. You'll find the Linktree link for everything you need as far as finding the show. We are audio only, but we're on all of the podcast players. So find us over there. And we appreciate y'all having us. Jay, anything else that you need to mention?
You can also we don't have any written content on there current, but we also have a website, touchdownjaguars.com, where archived episodes go. And when we have more time freed up, we will get written content up on there. But that's the only other plug that I have. And appreciate you all having us on. It was a great conversation. And we got to do a crossover where you all come to the Touchdown Jaguars podcast.
No, definitely. Always game.
I went ahead and you can find their Twitter or X tag in our description of our YouTube video. You can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/@EastCoastRams. We are also on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at East Coast Rams. You can find Ashton at RamFanAshton1 on X. You can find me at Zach Mayer. We're also on Instagram at East Coast Rams Pod and Blue Sky as well. Really appreciate you guys for coming out. And we will catch you guys next time.